And good evening and welcome to the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Along with Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. Coming up, we're going to talk about what's going on in high school boys and girls basketball, boys and girls hockey, plus special guests. Coming up at 6:20, we'll be joined by the head boys basketball coach of Stratford High School, Kurt Schmidt. Coach Schmidt leading a team that's off to a good start so far this season. So Kurt Schmidt, our coach guest, coming up at 6:20 tonight. And then at 7 o'clock, it is our student-athlete guest. And for the first time, a girls wrestler. All the years we've done this show have not had a girls wrestler on, but a very impressive young lady. Senior from Wausau West High School, Savannah Danielson. She made it to the state championship round at 107 pounds a year ago, and despite some adversity. So we'll talk about her history in wrestling and a whole bunch more with Savannah Danielson coming up at 7 o'clock. But I got to say, as much fun as it was to squeeze 4 guests in last week, I'm happy not to do it this week.
Yeah, it seemed like a track meet right from the get-go, but it's really good on it's good to hear from those kids and see what's going on with Brock Meyer and the other guests. Okay, cool, as much as it is fast.
Exactly. So let's jump into boys high school basketball, find out what's going on around the area, starting with the Wisconsin Valley Conference. And we're now into the season, and so far, a couple of undefeated. You got Marshfield at 3-0 so far in the conference. Stevens Point at 2-0. Then Wausau West 1-1. Wausau East and DC Everest are both 1-2. Wisconsin Rapids Lincoln 0-1, and Merrill is 0-2. In the past week, last Friday night, I was at the Wausau West Fieldhouse as the Stevens Point Panthers came to town. It was a defensive struggle. In fact, a game that was tied up at 18 early in the second half, but then a one run for Stevens Point proved to really be the difference as they defeated West 46-32. And the big star was Jaron Seas. Not normally the top scorer for Stevens Point, but he hit 6 3-point field goals. He was in the zone, had 22 points. Grant Chadena had 14. Brett Butala 10 for the Warriors. Stevens Point with the W. And again, that's what a good team does. It's normally been Chadena for Stevens Point, but Seas, boy, he was really the difference. And Wausau West, I thought, missed some shots they normally would make.
Well, and as a coach, you love to see when players step up. I mean, that's the making of any team. When guys, they can't get the looks they want, they get somebody else's best defensive effort and get shut down. What other things can people make happen? Whether that player adjusts to make their teammates better, or somebody else gets that moment to step up. And when you got a guy that can go ahead and do that and knock down those shots you want, it makes a difference. And it shows up in Spash's record. I mean, they're 8-0. That's quite a lot of games for a guys team right now.
And just talking about Stevens Point, then Saturday, a good non-conference win. They went to Kimberly, won 61-59, shot in 21. Carter Combs and Baraka McAleen had 13. And then last night, they rolled past DC Everest, 83-59. As you said, I mean, and that non-conference win steps up because we talk about so often the Wisconsin Valley Conference team struggling just a little bit when they go to the Fox Valley.
Yeah, and when I was preparing my notes last night for the show, one of the things that stood out to me, because this is a lingering question I'll take to my grave, will be getting out of the area, beating teams on the other part of the state from central Wisconsin, because sometimes I feel like in this area and being supportive of this area that we don't get the best rep for having some better basketball in the state, even though I think it's a lot of good basketball. So whenever central Wisconsin teams can get out there and knock some of these teams off, Spash has done a number. They got Kimberly. They beat Neenah earlier in the season. So some quality wins in that 8-0 mark, and obviously they're controlling some of those games that they want to control in the conference as well.
And despite the loss, I still think Wausau West gave a good battle. They really were able to slow down Stevens Point offensively. And then last night they bounced back with a 68-59 win over Rhinelander on the road. So 5 wins in the last 6 games for Wausau West. And I do think this is a West team that has the potential. And again, I think when you look at this conference, a bunch of these teams have that potential to work their way into the top 3. But I think really what Wausau West has been able to do, and I thought the bounce back last night was very important.
Yeah, anytime you take one in the conference that you want to play well on, or you look back and review the tape, and it's a run here or a couple of missed shots or turnovers here that kind of hurt you. You want to get those things rectified a little bit in that next game, and you look to take the court as soon as you can. And, for the Rhinelander game, that's always a big game because you got two guys in the same family coaching at
Especially
those
right
two
before
schools.
Christmas.
Yeah. So I think the holidays are a pretty big deal when you're sitting around the dinner table. I think that'd be kind of fun to be able to do that and have that camaraderie. So I think it's always a good win for whichever brother is able to pick that up. But as a coach, you want to see that bounce back and continue to stride. And I think you're dead on. There's a lot of teams looking at their rosters and what they've done so far that, are fighting in that conference area. And some are already setting themselves out. You Spash Marshfield trying to stay up top there, and other teams fighting to knock those guys out.
Marshfield, interesting. They won 2 conference games. They beat Everest 62-50 last Friday. Chris Pohl, Landon Lee 17 in that game for Marshfield. Xavier Edwards 14, Casey Studeman 13 for DCE. They beat Wausau East by good margin last night. I was a little surprised by the margin, 73-47. And then in the middle, they lost to a Neenah team rather significantly on Marshfield's home court Saturday, 58-31. Brooks Hinson basically was the offense for Marshfield, 17 points in that game. Marshfield, again, you can't take one game or even 2 or 3 games and I think take too much out of it, but if you're going to give Spash credit for winning the game against Kimberly on Saturday, it hurts Marshfield to lose by that margin to another Fox Valley team.
Right. Yeah. It in a comparison of scores, Spash obviously beat Neenah by 6 points, somewhere in there. And I think that, if you're looking at things to look forward to when you play each other, that's a game you like to take away, especially when things get down the road in the playoffs and people want to get ranked and put in an order of where they stand. For Marshfield, I was able to see them play a little bit last night. They have some consistent pieces. They were patient on offense. They look to they got some guys that can hit from the outside as well as a couple guys that can get from the basket and play pretty good team defense. So, as looking at the score against East, East is a solid basketball program, good team. Marshfield did some things well in that game, which made it a little tougher. So, Marshfield looks just like they're going to try to do what Marshfield does, kind of just plug along in that conference, stay sitting at that top, and they usually don't get caught sleeping a lot.
Will the real Wausau East stand up, however? I mean, last night they fall by, 26 points against Marshfield. They beat an always solid Merrill team Friday, 73-38. Charlie Cayley, massive night, 17 points, 17 rebounds. Caden Worth, 17 points. Isaac Rozwadowski with 12 for East. So a big win for the Jacks, a big loss for the Jacks. And while they're winning their non-conference games, now they're 1-2 in the conference.
Yeah, and I think the hard, again.
All right, tell us what you think, because you have the bloodline in that program.
Yeah. Well, I try, again, try not. Sometimes it's hard to dive into the ideas of everything just because, you're not in the locker room, you're not at practices. And I think that's what gives the coaches what they deserve out of their programs and their teams is they get to live those extra times of lives with the players, which I think is a big deal it makes. And then there should be some separation between the fans and the parents and things like that. So for East, I actually saw both those games. And then, in the Merrill game.
Are you a season ticket holder or something?
No,
here?
again, you got bloodlines, so you're watching the games. But,
I like
the
giving you a
Merrill
hard
game
time.
was, just true ownership in that game. They came out, they controlled the flow of the game. It was aggressive. They were attacking, and I think that role got switched a little bit against Marshfield. And the hard part is those games is, when you're scoring well or the ball's being moved, how are you going to play through those? And I think as teams for any team, whether it's in the Valley or in any of the conferences we cover, coaches are always looking for that consistency, and I think that's probably what East is trying to dive into. We want consistency in our games within the conference because they have expectations and they want to do well with this good group of ball players that they have, and they've shown it in their overall record at 7-2. But another part of that puzzle is how strong you want to finish in the conference also.
Great Northern Conference on the boys' side. You got Lakeland, Mosinee, and Rhinelander all undefeated in their conferences. Lakeland 4-0, Mosinee 3-0, Rhineland. Excuse me. I tell you,
he'll make it through the show, folks.
I'm trying.
You hear him not talking.
I talk way too much, and it's right now at the point where after tomorrow night's broadcast, get a full weekend off and early next week because I need it. But as I said, Lakeland, Mosinee, and Rhinelander undefeated. Medford 1-2, Pines 1-3, Tomahawk and Ashgo still winless. You look at what's been going on last Friday and last night. There were conference games. Friday night, Mosinee beat Antigo 71-18. Garrett Shoup 16. Keegan Jersley 15. Landon Tomer 13 points, 9 rebounds, 11 assists. Lakeland beat Pines 40-26. Rhinelander over Tomahawk 69-6. Was that correct, or did I put that down wrong?
Let's see. I had 69-26.
Okay, 20. My printer didn't go out right.
Yeah, a little more. Yeah.
And then last night, Mosinee beat Pines 79-35. Tomer 23 points, 20 rebounds. Jersley 16 points. Medford over Antigo 71-31. Lakeland over Tomahawk 69-22. So you look at the GNC. There's obviously a couple of tiers right now.
Exactly. I think it's starting to play out. You can see who's kind of going to fill in the bottom part, who's going to fight to stay at the top of that based on the discrepancy in the score, how the scores are, how far apart they are. And a couple of the teams now that are out there have beaten some of the teams that are at the bottom. So, I think when it's said and done, just based on Mosinee's lineup and what they've been able to, do in a little bit in their non-conference schedule, that they're going to be one of the top teams in there. As it goes on, Lakeland, you got to give them some credit too. They got a new coach. Obviously that coach is instilling their programs. They're sitting at 4-0. They've beaten a couple teams on the bottom, but 2 other wins against some conference opponents. And Rhinelander, we talk about them kind of trying to find that where are they at? Because they've been really, really top contender in that conference. And last couple of years they've been in the middle of the pack. They're sitting at 3-0. So you see that. I kind of want to get out and see when they start duking it out with each other with those top 3 or 4 teams. The one that surprises me, because I know they still got a couple players back, is Medford yet. It looks like they're a good program. Coach Brown does a great job with them, but they only got that 1 win overall right now.
Merriwood Conference South. Again, as always a very tough league. You got Auburndale and Marathon undefeated in the conference at 5-0. Stratford 4-1. Edgar 3-2. Assumption 2-3. Newman Catholic 0-5. Games on Friday and last night. Last Friday, Marathon beat Newman 78-34. Grant Warren 26 points, 10 rebounds. Tyler Underwood 14 for Marathon. Quincy Fender led Newman with 16 points. Stratford with a nice win over Edgar, 57-54. Drew Brusowitz and Reed Miller, 15 points each for Stratford. Brett Baumgartner, 16. Tegan Strite, 14 for Edgar. Auburndale Friday beat Assumption 61-38. Every night it's Caden and Caden for Auburndale. Caden Anderson 23, Caden Weinfurter 14, JT Schaefer 22 for Assumption. And then last night it was Auburndale over Edgar 65-59. Big win for Auburndale. Couple of tough losses for Edgar between Friday and Tuesday. Caden Weinfurter 22, Caden Anderson 16. Marathon beat Assumption 76-47. Stratford over Newman Catholic 64-29. Henry Zaleski 16, Caden Foster 12. Quincy Fender and Lucas Piffner 13 each for the Cardinals. So when you look at it, no surprises. I would say that coming in, Marathon, Auburndale, expected to be perhaps where they are. I think Stratford has to be very happy with the start they've had. They only lost to a Marathon. Edgar still playing good basketball. I mean, those 2 losses, they're 3-2 in the conference, but very tight losses. So those 4 teams right now have to feel, I think, pretty solid. Assumption where they are, and the Cardinals of Newman, obviously, not unexpected. It's going to be a growing process for Newman. But when you look at the conference, as normal, Merriwood South looking very strong.
Yeah, it's a dogfight again, and not much to add because you hit it right on the head. I think Newman's looking to grow. They got to start, I guess. Every little thing's going to be a battle, and they're going to have to take the most consideration to all those little battles and try to win as many as you can. So you just keep growing to maybe be a little more competitive as the season goes on and as you see teams the second time around. For Edgar, doing what they do. They're staying right in the thick of things. They lost a couple tight ones, which could come down to some free throws, extra turnovers at the end of the game. But the 2 teams that they lost to are respectable teams that are up at the top of that conference, and one's undefeated, one only has 1 loss to Marathon, like you said. I think Stratford's got to be happy. They're getting some offensive output out of players, but when the defensive side of the ball has been their focus over the years and keeping teams in check and keeping scores down. But Stratford, squeezing out a tight one against Edgar is a good win, and they turn around, obviously beat Newman for their next one. Auburndale just keep doing what Auburndale does. They're always hanging around. They're always waiting for that moment, and then take advantage of it. Even a couple, they handled Assumption, but the tight one against Edgar was a good win, and getting point production out of the players you listed, and there'll be another marking because Stratford and I think they each play each other, Stratford Auburndale, before the break. And Marathon's 7-0 mark right now, expected to be, what they are, and you can see that in their scores, especially in their last two games where they put up around 80 and held both teams to one to under 40 and the other under 50.
Marywood Conference North, they got Rib Lake right now atop the league, 6-2 overall, 3-2 in the conference. Then Phillips, 2-2 in the conference. Athens and Prentice at 2-3. Abbotsford 1-4, Shawamigan 0-4, and obviously again, also often the records skew a little bit because those crossovers do count in the league standings. But Rib Lake wins over Abbotsford 66-40 last Friday, and also over Prentice 61-54 last night. You have other teams. Athens fell to Phillips last Friday, 68-58, but beat Shawamigan last night 75-58. Phillips, a couple of wins, said they beat Athens, and then they beat Abbotsford last night. So after a bit of a slow start for Phillips in the conference, they're back to 500. And Abbey with a couple of losses to Spencer last Thursday, and then as well to Phillips last night. But Rib Lake, I mean, that little gym is always such a
home court advantage.
Interesting place to go.
Very
but
much
I mean,
so.
They're 6-2 overall, obviously off to a good start. And it looks like it's going to be quite a battle. I mean, again, who's able to find some wins in those crossover games in the North?
And and that's, I think, going to be the difference. Maybe it looks, just looking at the scores that you've seen, not actually physically seeing any of these teams play other than Athens against Newman. It just looks like it's going to come down to a matter of winning some of those tight games that they play up in that part of the conference, as well as stealing one you're not supposed to on the crossovers. Rib Lake had, favored to win that conference. One of the few that have a winning record right now. But they go from. I watched Athens against Newman, and Athens is a solid basketball team. Plays very physical, both on the offensive and defensive end. And Rib Lake handled Athens, and then they turn around and Prentice, who's down toward the bottom half of that conference, they only beat by a little bit. So it just shows you how, for all conferences, how competitive that play is inside of most of them, and how you get to go against those teams so much and so often. You get to really know each other.
CWC East, Wittenberg-Burnhamwood right now in a tie for second at 2-1 with Iola Scandinavia. Whitburn 4-3 overall. Bondwell currently leads that conference. Shiocton and Wyowega Fremont 1-1, Amherst 1-2, Manawa 1-2, Menominee Indian at 0-3. Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, a couple of wins in the past week. They defeated Menominee Indian 75-44 last Thursday. Jet Rogowski 23, Ian Salveson, Jaden Clark, Hayden Miller 10 each. Last night got past Shawano in a non-conference game by a score of 55-51. So again, we're haven't seen the Chargers in person yet, but and again that CWC East, everybody but Menominee Indian has already won a game. They've only played 3. There's only one undefeated team through 3 games. That shows a balance, because normally when you're only 3 games into a conference campaign and some of the teams only played 2, you see a few more teams with 0 wins and a few more teams with 0 losses. But right now they're all knocking each other off.
Well, and as a competitor, it's a little nerve-wracking maybe as a coach and sometimes as players going into the game, because you're worried about it all the time. Every time you show up, you got to show up. You don't have a night off. So I guess what I'm saying, as a competitor, you're going to enjoy that because you're going to go get the best of everybody when they come to play. And I think that's the case, and it kind of makes it hard to predict where things will end up. But for Wittenberg, sitting at 2-1, then taking one there from teams that are very competitive is a good record. I think in hearing sometimes the Division II coaches talk about Shawano and how they are, I think that's a quality win when they beat them on Tuesday. And I think this Friday, if I have it correct, they got St. Mary's Catholic coming in, who last year we got to see play against Newman a little bit. I think not all those guys are back, but they were a very good good team, and if they have some of those guys back, that'll be another good test because I think they're going to play different styles where Wittenberg's going to want to set up and play real physically, and St. Mary's going to want to get out and run. So that's a good test to see where they're at.
And finally, real quickly, CWC North, we follow Northern Lutheran in that conference. They only had one game last week, and that was last night, and they fell to Nakusa in a non-conference game, 70-53. So that means Northland now 1-6 overall. And again, you're hoping for Northland, again, such a small school trying to compete, and it's been a bit of a rough start for Northland.
Yeah, it's they within their conference, it's where they want to get some of those W's. I mean, they want to win them all, obviously, everybody does, but that's where they're going to come, just be probably more so because of the comparison size of the schools. And they went out and played Nakusa, which is a bigger school than them by far, and lost that one Tuesday night. The difficult, we talk about Northern Lutheran being a little bit different makeup because of the way the kids have to travel and just the way it's set up with not having the same number of kids. And I always find it interesting, they take that one trip to that Lutheran tournament that they play in, but then they usually have off based on that last conference game. And now, again, they don't start conference play back up till January 6th. And you wonder how much those kids travel to school over the break, because that's going back and forth a long way. So just a little bit different setup. And being an area team, you hope they get some W's as soon as they can.
We're going to take a break and then come back with our first guest of the evening, our coach guest for this week. We'll be talking to the head boys basketball coach of Stratford High School. Talk to Kurt Schmidt coming up next. This is the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. On Thursday night, the Wausau West High School boys basketball team looks for their 6th win in their last 7 games, traveling to Wisconsin Rapids to take on the Red Raiders. Hear all the exciting action live on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app, starting with the pregame show at 7 and the opening tip at 7:15. Wausau West Warrior High School basketball on Bull Falls Radio is brought to you by the Clover Belt Credit Union, Red Robin Restaurant, Sun Printing, Graphic Packaging International, the Wausau West Athletic Department, Menke Automotive, Shine Chiropractic, and Picks and Pieces. It's Wausau West at Wisconsin Rapids in high school boys basketball. Thursday night, 7 o'clock pregame, live on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app.
Winter sports are here. Align your young athletes and yourself with health by scheduling an appointment with Dr. Sarah at Shine Chiropractic in Rib Mountain. Stay in the game with our comprehensive 3-point neurological exam, safe for the entire family. Don't let the daily grind keep you and your student athletes on the sidelines this year. Call Dr. Sarah at 715-298-5104. That's 715-298-5104 in Rib Mountain today.
Hungry for flavor-packed fun?
Dive into Red Robin's sizzling burgers, mouth-watering fries, and endless options.
Or maybe you're craving the perfect slice.
Then it's Donato's Pizza, your passport to pizza perfection.
Order now and treat yourself to an unforgettable taste experience.
Red Robin and Donato's Pizza, 225548 Rib Mountain Drive in Wausau.
Call 715-301-0019 or log on redrobin.com.
Red Robin and Donato's Pizza.
What's your idea of fall fun? Maybe it's hitting the trails on a new ATV. Then it's time to call CCU. That's Clover Belt Credit Union. Or if you're thinking of a UTV for hauling wood or hunting, or maybe just because it would make the tasks around your property so much easier, it's time to call CCU. ATVs, UTVs, utility tractors, and their attachments for care of your property. Whether you need it for fun or to get the job done, Clover Belt Credit Union is here to help with the great rate financing you want. What are you waiting for? Life's too short and winter's too long. Thinking about a motorhome or maybe a snowplow for your ATV or utility tractor? Call CCU for great rate financing. And if you're thinking motorcycle, Clover Belt Credit Union has the financing you need for the bike you want. Call or apply online at ccuwausau.com. Check it out. For vehicle loans, for mortgages, for financing fall fun, call Clover Belt Credit Union. That's CCU. Local lenders lending local money, keeping our community strong.
And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO. And on the Civic Media app. With Jeff Grass, I'm Chad Holmes. Time now to welcome back our coach guest for this week, the head boys basketball coach of Stratford High School, Kurt Schmidt. And Coach, again, thank you for spending a few minutes with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Well, 6 wins, 1 loss so far in the season. Looks like a solid start. Of course, at Stratford, you always have to wait for the football team to bring back a trophy, usually, to start off your basketball season. But I guess generally to start things off, the first question is, how have things gone so far in the first 7 games of the season?
Well, first off, I'd like to say the kids have been outstanding. I mean, they've worked hard. They've had a great attitude. They've had an attitude of wanting to get going and wanting to learn. So that's been good. We survived a really close win, 2 close wins, I guess. We're not there yet. We still don't know our inbounds plays real well because I've got multiple people playing multiple spots, so it's harder to learn them. But because everybody's like the same height, and similar skills, so we got to deal with that. And we're not quite at that point where I can call out a play and everybody, whoever's in there knows exactly where to be. We're not there yet. Special situations are not there yet, but overall. But other than that, we're doing pretty well. We had a really good game against Marathon too. We kept it pretty close till the very end. I think it was a 6-7 point game with not many minutes left in the second half. And then I just think we wore out. We didn't rotate fast enough, and they were hitting some shots at the end, and we didn't shoot well. I think we're 4 for 26 at the 3-point line. Shot 25% for the game total. So that doesn't help anything. So other than that game, we've been just doing what we need to do to, we've been playing really good defense and taking care of the ball overall, making our free throws. We haven't been consistent at, having a good field goal percentage, but we've been, I think, doing the little things pretty well, considering, some miscommunications at times on defense and stuff. But that's where we stand.
And Coach, I want to step away just from the season at the moment and currently how things are, because I'm curious. You've been coaching for a long time. How many years? And for those people that don't know, our listeners that don't know the number of years you also logged on the girls' side, how many total years you got in right now?
I believe this is my 27th, I think.
Okay. So with that being said, there's obviously not a certificate, nothing going out there, but I think there's a lot to be said for that longevity at schools, for that time you take, out of, there's obviously other things people could be doing, and you take time for the athletes, you take time for the school. It's a big deal to you. In all that time, 27 years, what's been probably as you see as one of the more challenging parts about being a high school coach, and one of the, I have an idea probably what you'll say, but one of the most rewarding things about being a high school coach?
Well, I think what stands out to me as I get older even more is when you're younger, you can handle the teaching all day, and then you have a game, you travel to Phillips, Park Falls, Schwambigan, you get home at 10, 10:30, 11. You're not eating the greatest because you can't eat at a normal time before your game, and then you don't sleep well. Well, you got a full day the next day, and what people don't get, like the turnaround, okay? We just played Newman last night. I had to figure out, now obviously I look at things well in advance, but I've got one day to get guys ready for a whole nother kind of an opponent. It's not like football where you got every Friday. And that wears on you for 4 months, eventually. And I think, I'm not even sure how guys do it that have coached for 40 years. But I do get, too, a lot of them retire when they're 55, 56, 57, and they can, not teach all day. And then kind of coaching, they got enough energy to coach. I think if you were to ask me what's the challenge, the older you get, it's the not to catch up on your sleep. And you got to teach a full 8 hour. I mean, you got to put a full day in, and then you got to practice for another 2 hours, and then the next day you've got maybe an hour after school, and then you got to catch a bus and basically be at games all night. That's probably the toughest part of the in season. I think it's getting harder in the off season because the summers are. It's hard to plan any vacations. It's hard to go golfing when you want to all the time. It seems like you always have stuff going on that, you're coaching. Might be travel softball, but you've got basketball. You've got, I help my son with baseball, and I have kids playing baseball and softball. And I think, but, it works. It just definitely gets harder. It's a challenge. The off-season part, so it's kind of how it is.
And how about the most rewarding part? What's the best part about why you keep doing this? Because again, like you said, there's a lot of other things people can invest their time into. So what do you enjoy the most about why you keep coming back every year? Because I figure the next time we'll talk, you'll be 50 years in instead of 27, 28.
Yeah, I don't know how that'll be, but I guess part of it is you want to stay healthy and you want to keep that energy level at a high level. You want to have people buy in still, but most rewarding part still. I remember when I got into education, I always tried to say to myself that I had some really great educators that were a really good influence on me. I had some coaches, some teachers, and I kind of wanted to pay them back by thinking of it as a package deal. Like I had some coaches that were absolutely outstanding human beings towards me. Like they made me feel really good about myself. They filled a void that maybe I would have in my life or something like that at the time. And then I had some teachers that were always relational. They were just fantastic. You're having a bad day. They were trying really hard to keep you going. And I thought to myself, I got into coaching. I started coaching when I was 19. I coached Little League and Pony League baseball, and I coached Saturday morning 5th and 6th grade basketball in college. And so I've been coaching total for 30 years, just not being a head coach for that long. And I've been going consecutively for 30 years. And there's times you gotta fight off that, that tired feeling, that is there something else to do, but it doesn't last long because ultimately you realize it's a package deal. I want to teach and coach at the same time. And when I'm done teaching, I could probably keep coaching, but I really don't want to be done coaching while I'm teaching. Now, it doesn't mean I have to be a head coach for the next 10 years, but I like coaching. I like to help kids, and that's a way you can really reach them. Is because, let's be honest, sports makes the world go round. If you want a kid's attention that's struggling with life and you're a coach, what's Tom Landry say, or somebody, Billy Graham, coach has more influence. One coach has more influence on a kid than any adult the rest of their lives all combined. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing. So that's that's the most rewarding part is being able to be an influence and then competing. I mean, let's be honest. When you get older and you don't play stuff too much anymore, it's fun competing with kids. Like Friday night was a really good game for us. Kids were excited in the locker room beating, when we beat Edgar in a pretty close game. And that was fun being a part of that.
Again, we're talking to Kurt Schmidt, the head boys basketball coach at Stratford High School, here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Maybe part and parcel of what Jeff was just asking you about, your length of service as the coach at Stratford. How important is consistency within a program for success? Because you look at some of the successful programs in the Merriwood Conference South. There's a consistency within the coaches, and we don't see as much of that throughout sports at the high school level. How important is having the consistent relationships between the leaders of these programs and the students coming up through the system?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important because what you're trying to do, too, is you're trying to have a relationship with parents and coaches at your lower levels, and you're trying to implement essentials in your program that you'd like to see them do with the kids when they coach. I think it's important, too, continuity with coaching staffs, too. You look at what happened to Edgar last year. Their whole staff ended up leaving at the same time. And that's not an easy thing for the new coaches to come in there and just, try to do all the things that need to be done. It's nice to have some carryover. It's nice to have some other guys with experience. But that would be tough if, like, I lost my whole staff. That wouldn't be easy to have to overcome. Those are just some examples. I think, what the question you're asking is the consistency. And, I look at Stratford football, you go from Calticus to Jason Tubbs, who worked under him, right? And then when the time comes when Jason Tubbs leaves, chances are pretty good one of his assistants may take over. I'm not saying for sure, but the chances could be. Well, if that happens, they've seen what's supposed to be done. Chad Weinfurter following Tim Anderson. He's maintained that program of excellence. Adam Jacobson kind of following, Reike and, different coaches probably for them even. Jack Culhane. So you can see there's consistency that way, but I would say, ultimately, if you have 4 or 5, I remember when I took over the girls about 80 years ago, I think when the Model T was possibly invented. When I took over the girls, I was the 5th new coach I think I was the 5th new coach in 4 years. Do the math there. That means there was 2 coaches in 1 year. And there wasn't any stability. It was just not a good situation. And then fortunately we were able to have some success and whatnot. But I think that's what's helped Stratford boys basketball maintain a pretty high level of success and consistency of competing, is just trying to have, the same coaching staff, a feeder program that works really well, and community support, all that stuff.
And Coach, you mentioned it earlier, and one of the questions I was going to ask is, what we see out of the Merriwood, but I think it almost becomes the same answer. This is a tough conference. You can't take a night off. You've got to come play hard. But getting back to your initial statement about, they came off the football, long football season, getting their feet back in, getting them back in shape. For you, what's the timetable and kind of the measuring sticks? Because I think, talking off air a little bit, you're happy for where you're at with the time you've had with the kids and the success they found early on and where they're hanging around at the top of the conference. But what's the perfect timetable for you since you've done this before? Like when the expectations comes, now we can't be goofing up on inbounds plays. Everybody's got to know this. We have to be in shape because, you have measuring sticks at your season too. Like here's our first couple practices. How did we do at the first game? Now we're a couple games in. We've started our conference season. Here's where we want to be at our Christmas break tournament. Here's where we want to be in the month of January. How do you kind of measure all that out? And what's your, stepping stones, so to speak, that you look at if you have a process or whatever, just looking to see what it is?
Well, I'll tell you what, that is a great question. I'm going to be honest with you. That is a great question because I don't have a great answer for you.
Well, we expect a great answer. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
No, I don't. However, but I'll give you some scenarios. Like, for example, this year, for the first time, I started legitimately the Monday after the state football game. First time. Because it was a touchy thing. I mean, everybody would always say, you got to give them a week off. You got to give them more time off. That's that. And I remember when I first started, I did girls for 4 years, took over boys. We actually went to the sectional championship game my first year with the boys. And I remember trying to start that Monday after, and the kids were zapped, unmotivated. They struggled to turn the page. And that's what ultimately was like, oh my gosh, that was kind of miserable having practices with kids not really wanting to be there. But I understood that. I mean, I understand it was nice to have a break. But then on the flip side, I mean, you look at the team I had with my oldest son. We would give him a week off. And we'd have to cancel or postpone the first game. Well, we would almost lose the first game or two. If it was a pretty good conference opponent, we would almost lose that. We'd barely win it. And then the next time we played them, we'd win by 20 or 25. So the week off, that wasn't good for the program. It might have been good for the kids in the short term mentally, but it was definitely not good if you're trying to win a conference championship. Otherwise, you're always behind the eight ball. You're never on a level playing field. You already aren't, because you start a week late if you start on a Monday after the state term. You don't get a scrimmage. And in a scrimmage, you generally will face three teams. You don't get any of that. So I remember when we played Neillsville, the head coach this year at Neillsville said, hey, I was kind of surprised you played us. I thought you'd postpone. I go, we got to get started. You might throttle us, might take it to us. We're going to dribble the ball off our feet out of bounds. We're not going to be able to catch it very well. We'll probably miss a lot of shots. We'll be out of shape. But you got to start. You got to get something in before your conference season starts. And so, to be honest with you, this is the second year I've ever started truly on the Monday, like mandatory on a Monday. And I haven't heard any whispers of negativity from my kids. Body language has been great. And to be honest with you, the only thing we missed was the scrimmages that you would face. But otherwise, our first game was the same night as some of the teams in our conference. Now, do you miss the scope and sequence of a good 2-week practice? Yeah, you missed that. So you're on a train that's going 100 miles an hour. You're still trying to get on it while it's running, whereas everybody else is at the train station getting on board while it's stationary, trying to figure out, okay, here's where our destination is. This is how long it's going to take to cover this. I still don't have that. I still got to be like, oh, shoot, what are the essentials? Fundamentals, we're behind. Well, we're going to have to not worry about the X's and O's nearly as much as the fundamentals, because it doesn't matter if you do your X's and O's, but you can't make baskets and can't dribble. Doesn't matter. So you're better off not running things perfectly well, but being able to hit shots and create for people. That's kind of where we're at. So to answer your question, I don't have a great answer. This year is different than almost every other year. And I think because the kids took the bull by the horns and said, we're going to get started, we could be tired, not really feel like, I couldn't see it. We're 6-1 right now.
When you look at your squad, we were talking in the first segment about what's happened last week, and talking about your two games. You had two kids lead your way in scoring in the game against Edgar. You had two different kids lead the way in the game last night against Newman. How would you characterize the what are the characteristics of this team that you've seen so far?
Well, the characteristics stick out right now is they're super coachable. They work hard. They're trying really hard, and they're thoroughly enjoyable to be around. That's the first thing that sticks out. As far as an identity, we're still trying to figure that out. Like we have good players that other teams focus on, so they might not have a high volume night, but somebody else steps up that night. An example would be Reed Miller had a great night against Edgar. He drilled 4 threes, had 13 points in the first half, kept us in it. That's what you got to have when you have other teams that focus on your one or two best players. Is other guys got to step up, and you got to do it some way. We're not very tall. Some guys are athletic and quick. Some guys aren't. Some guys can really shoot it. Some guys are not quite there yet. Some guys can attack the basket. Some can't. That's kind of like we're trying to figure out roles and get guys. I think it's coming. It's still going to take a little time.
And Coach, I guess I said before we could summarize what it usually is, but just, a little bit of your thoughts on the conference. There's always some same things that stick out, in how it is and how it is to play and coach in that. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think you've played everybody now except Auburndale in the southern part. Correct.
And Assumption. Yeah,
and
we
Assumption.
played Auburndale or Assumption.
Yeah. So your take on what it is. It seems, it could be a little different because of the players, but it's still the same old competitive physical battle, I think, all the time. So go ahead and tell us some of your insights on the conference this year.
Well, I mean, it's extremely hard, as you well know. It's hard to explain. It's when I don't have maybe a team that's loaded with talent, and the teams that are in the top of the conference, they're still nervous to play us. And then vice versa. If we're kind of in the top of the conference talent-wise and prediction-wise, there's teams in our conference like, oh my gosh, you're just in knots because, it can go either way just because of how difficult the conference is. I mean, it is a very deep basketball conference, and lots of media people have stated it, Twitter and whatnot, that it's a very, very difficult small school high school basketball conference. And the funny thing about it is huddle and media and all that stuff. We have coaches in our conference that study you hard. We study them hard, and it's kind of it's just a difficult battle.
Jeff, anything else for the coach before we wrap things up?
No, just wish you good luck. I mean, you did a great job on all the insights you gave us. I wish you the best of luck against or when Auburndale shows up in the gym on Thursday. You can tell Chad Weinfurter that I told you that I'm rooting for you versus him. And then I'll turn around and call him and tell him just the opposite. But just kidding. But we wish you the best of luck and into your Christmas tournament and all that. It sounds like some great things are happening and only continued improvement as the kids get the legs under them and get to the exact area and consistency that you want them to as the season progresses.
And I think if you have the time, you could run for mayor because you gave me a nice flip-flop there. You could run for a little office.
Yeah, I'm the farthest thing from that, but that's another show.
Okay.
Coach
Well, thanks a lot, guys, and it's nice talking to you, Jeff.
Absolutely.
It's good seeing you when I can, but take care and stay healthy, and hopefully we'll see you when we head to Newman.
Appreciate it.
Coach Kurt Schmidt of the Stratford Tigers. We'll come back in 2 minutes with more here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 1230.
Big Time Hoops performances, plus the WIAA's classification committee hears appeals. I'm Travis Wilson, and this is a WisSports.net Minute brought to you by NFHSNetwork.com. More high school sports news after this.
Do you ever wish you could be in two places at once? With homework, carpool, practice, and everything else, sometimes you just can't make it to every game. But the NFHS Network's streaming platform makes that a little easier. For just $11.99 a month, you can watch unlimited high school sports live and on demand, at home or on the go. You can watch online or on one of our mobile or connected TV apps. Visit NFHSNetwork.com and subscribe today to never miss another game.
Gay Electric Trempealeau took down defending Division IV state champion Luther 83-77 in a boys basketball game last Thursday as the Redhawks remain unbeaten. It was quite a night for GET senior Cody Schmitz, who scored 41 points with 15 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals. In the game, he went over 2,000 points for his career as he's averaging 33.8 points per contest so far this season. Wisconsin Lutheran remains undefeated after capturing the title at the 608 basketball tournament over the weekend. The Vikings downed Onalaska 77-61 on Friday as senior Duke recruit Con Knippel had a game-high 25 points, 13 rebounds, and 7 assists. On Saturday, against a very good Lakeville North team from Minnesota that features Wisconsin Badger commit Jack Robeson, Wisconsin Lutheran scored a 68-63 win as Knippel was a perfect 10 for 10 from the free throw line en route to 33 points. Last week, the WIAA's classification committee heard appeals from fall sports teams who met the tournament performance factor point threshold to be elevated a division next year. 24 of the 40 teams eligible to appeal did so, though just one was granted an appeal by the committee, the Waniwak girls volleyball team. Get more information on the outcomes and responses from impacted schools at wisports.net. This has been a wisports.net Minute. Check us out online at wisports.net.
And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO. Again, thanks to Stratford head boys basketball coach Kurt Schmidt for joining us. Coming up in just a few minutes, we'll be joined by our student-athlete guest for this week from Wausau West, wrestler Savannah Danielson. But first, a few minutes here to talk about high school girls basketball, starting with the Wisconsin Valley Conference. You got Marshfield and Stevens Point, I think, as expected, right now undefeated. Marshfield 4-0, Stevens Point 3-0. Wisconsin Rapids, a little bit of maybe an early surprise. 2-1 in the conference. They're 3-6 overall. Wausau West, Merrill are both 1-2. Wausau East 1-3, and DC Everest 0-4. And looking at some of the action, conference play in the WVC both last Friday and last night. Stevens Point, impressive in both games. They defeated Wausau West last Friday 59-40. Jada Seibert 19 points, and one of their top players, Adelie Nest, has been out. She did not play. And then last night they knocked off DC Everest by a score of 60-28. Seibert 20 for Spash, Kirsten Hall 13 for DCE. Marshfield, meantime, rolled past DC Everest 66-37 and beat Wausau East 69-45. Again, neither of those are expected to be challenging at the top of the conference, but it is early. But right now, it appears that Marshfield and Spash are the teams are going to be those two matchups when they face off are going to be very, very significant.
Yeah, it's just statistic-wise, it's showing up in terms of the scores that you're seeing and in terms of the records that they've upheld and being.
Think about Spash real quickly. Real quick, and then you can continue. Is they were struggling a bit in the non-conference, but boy, since the conference has started, not only are they winning, they're winning impressively. And I thought that game against West, they actually were ahead by more than the 19 they won it by. It looks like after some early season maybe hiccups, new head coach Janelle McCarville, it looks like it's starting to fit in right now.
Well, that's part of what you want to see in a challenging non-conference schedule. I mean, we looked at some of the teams that they were playing. They were playing some good teams, and as far as when you get to the playoffs, getting out of the area, those are the teams you end up wanting to beat and play maybe a little bit more competitively. But once you jump back into your conference, you want to be strong and ready for that play, and you see that out of Spash. I mean, that 59-40 is a significant win over West, and obviously they handled DC Everest. So, for them, I think, consistency, getting some things to click in that conference. They have one more, another non-conference game, I think, when they pop back after break to see what they're going to do in the Century Classic. So they'll jump back and kind of dive back into that and see if they can manage some more. But for them, I think their non-conference woes and turn into some good conference wins in the turnaround on that.
It was a good week for Merrill. They beat Wausau East, and again, that was not a game where you could roll it out anymore. East is a much improved team, but Merrill defeated East on Friday 62-39, and then they, in a non-conference game, beat Oneida Nation 82-58. And really, one of the top performers of the week in girls basketball was Maya Ott. She had 32 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists against East, and then came back with 31 points and 10 rebounds in the game on Monday.
Yeah, for Merrill, we've talked to Coach DeBoer enough where he's given us his insights and feels that his conference schedule is as strong as he wants it to be in terms of that. But for them, playing Wausau East has always been kind of that rivalry game, and 62-39 I think is a significant number of points. 62 points is a good score to put up on them and show that they kind of want to start creeping up to more of that middle of the pack. Top 3 or 4 in that conference. So for them, I think, a good week. And again, they'll test themselves as they jump back into for a great Northern opponent on Thursday.
And I think last night the surprise game was Rapids winning at West. 69-66. Rapids had struggled a bit, really struggled significantly last year. And I thought Wausau West still has some pretty good talent. And for Rapids to go into the West Fieldhouse and earn a W, I thought that one kind of stood out. And again, not seeing the game, but at the same time, it does look like a Rapids team that must be much improved.
Yeah, they're being more competitive. They're 2-1 overall in the conference. And, beat West. They have had a good run in a couple of those games. I think, on the flip side for West, it shows coaches looking for that consistency when you're not getting done what you want to get done within the conference. Lost a tight one there by a couple points, and that those games are hard games. You either like to win significantly or lose significantly because it's just there wasn't a couple things probably. So when you got these tight ones, you got to look back and see what it is. But as of right now, as the record stands, it looks like Rapids has improved in that conference.
Great Northern Conference. You got Lakeland 5-0 in the conference, 9-1 overall. Rhinelander still undefeated in the conference, 4-0 in the league, 6-3 overall. Mosinee 3-1 in the conference, 8-2 overall. Medford and Pines 1-3. Antigo 1-4, Tomahawk 0-4, and I guess you have to start with the numbers that Christina Wilmette is putting up. Another couple of games for Lakeland, a couple more games over 30 points. Last Friday, Lakeland beat Pines 73-28, Wilmette 33. Ava Evenhouse had 12, and then as well. Last night, 87-18 win for Lakeland. Wilmette had 35, Evenhouse 15, and Wilmette now averaging 31.8 points per game so far this season. I mean, again, she's setting things up for a historically significant season for Lakeland.
Well, it's a lot of points, and it shows up in the numbers that they're turning. Where her team's up over 70 points, 80 points. A lot of the games that they're playing, 9-1 mark though. That's at the end of the day, it's what you want as a team. And one of those losses was just to another non-conference team when they played early on, I think, down in Beaver Dam. So Lakeland doing what you expect. At the end of the day, I think they've already beat Mosinee once, correct?
Yes.
So expecting to be the front runners of that conference based on what they've already set up for themselves. So now it's about consistency, staying healthy, continuing to improve so that you're ready for your playoff run and a conference title as the season progresses.
And Mosinee played very well. I mean, they're 8-2 now, 3-1. Again, the only loss came to Lakeland in the conference. They had a couple of significant wins in terms of the margin, beating Antigo 69-31 last Friday, and Pines 66-23 last night, and getting good production. They had 3 players in double digits against Antigo. Taylon Jershely, who's averaging more than 20 per game on the season, had 11 in that game. Alexia Borisenko and Britt Fitzgerald 10. Jershely 18 last night. Amber Gonzalez 16. Caitlin Sell 12. And again, I mean, it looks like this Mosinee team, I think, is going to be a team to keep an eye on, both in terms of it's going to be tough to beat Lakeland, obviously, because the second time around they'll be playing up in Minocqua. But when you do get to the Division II playoffs, and I'm assuming that Mosinee still in D2, and sometimes assumptions are bad. I mean, I can't. But at the same time, it looks like a team that has the capability of making something happen.
Well, just looking at some of the scores again, I think.
And a real fast. They had a good non-conference win against Edgar Monday, 74-48.
And that's the one I was just going to toss in there. I think if you could, jump outside your conference a little bit and play well against another area team like they did against Edgar, that tests yourself kind of for that playoff run you want to make. 2 things that always come to my mind when I look at numbers is, in a full 2 halves of basketball, what are you holding teams to? I think if you can put up some points and keep teams under 50, you have a pretty good chance to win that game. And then when you do go up over that 60-70 mark, usually have a couple kids, 3-digit, double-digit scores, which is balanced attack, which makes it hard for the defense. It's easy to go after one person, hard to go, a little harder as you get to 2 and 3. And I think, from the averages and from what Mosinee's holding, they're sitting in a good spot. It's going to be tough to get past Lakeland for that conference title, but amping themselves up for the end of the season and just continuing to get better, they're setting a solid mark right now.
Merriwood South, Assumption 5-0 in the conference, 9-0 overall. Auburndale also undefeated, 3-0 in the conference, 6-0 overall. Stratford off to a 4-1 start in the conference, 5-4 overall. Edgar 3-3 in the league. Newman and Marathon 1-5. Assumption continues to roll. They beat Marathon 57-14 last Thursday, but they had a good non-conference game on Monday. We talked about this last week. They went to a Rhinelander, and they actually trailed by 5, 29-24 at halftime. But Assumption outscored Rhinelander 36-17 in the second half to win 60-46. Sarah Shaw 17, Anna Schooley 15 for the Royals. And Auburndale, they dodged a pretty significant bullet last Thursday in a conference game. They played Edgar, and Edgar led 22-11 at halftime, but Auburndale came back and won 42-41. So, again, both teams got tested, but both teams still undefeated.
Yeah, and I think for Assumption, again, any small school, when you're D5 or lower and you can go out and play a bigger school and come up with that win, and especially if you've played from behind, that's a good W. So, sitting at 9-0, 5-0 in the conference is a couple of big marks. Turn around, trying to continue to hold that lead against the second place team, which they'll see next in Stratford. For Auburndale to sit at 3-0, still not have a loss in that conference. Not a lot of conference games yet, but still some things to get measured on. And I think it says a lot about your team when you can come from behind, whether you're not shooting well, whether you're turning the ball over too much, whether there's some part of the game that's not working the way you want it for your team. When they can pop back and come back, whether it's a tight win, whether it's an ugly win, come from behind, whatever it is, I think that's a big deal, and that can really give you those huge moments of growth you want throughout the season. So for Auburndale, I'm sure, Edgar probably not happy, Auburndale very much happy with that 1-point win.
And for the two teams at the bottom, got wins the last couple of nights. I was over in Marathon on Monday, and the Marathon Red Raiders defeated Colby 58-49. Miley Halkey 19, Emma Love 18 for the Raiders. And last night, Newman got a much-needed win, 61-14 over Tri-County. Newman had showed some spark last Thursday. They actually led in Stratford 38 at 19-18 at half, but could not get much going offensively in the second half, and Stratford came back to win 38-27. But I think for both those teams, there is some talent. From watching Marathon, a lot of young players, a lot of sophomores, and both Halkey and Love are sophomores. They've struggled offensively going into that game. Nobody was averaging 5 points per game. I mean, that was something, but they were able to find a little offensive for Newman. Again, it's a transition with a new coach, and they've had moments where they've been competitive but have not been able to finish. Getting W's for those two teams I thought was significant.
And I think that's, again, I've already said it, the consistency is just some of the hardest parts to come by. And that's why as a coach, you diagnose it, you break it down, you figure out what we can do better on based on what our physical abilities are and the things that they can accomplish together as a team versus individuals. And I think W's at some point, just you want them to happen, and they need to happen. And for both those teams not having a lot in that category, I think anytime you can get the W, it just makes players and coaches, if it's more validated to what you're trying to accomplish and makes things go a little smoother and a little easier. So both with wanting to get those wins and taking for Marathon, for example, bouncing back because they had a difficult time. Obviously, anybody's going to have a difficult time with Assumption, but that was a little bit of a rough score. So to pop back and get that W and work together. And for Newman, they've been playing these moments of basketball where they've been solid and they just haven't put enough together over a whole game to finish it out and get on that in that winning way all the time and be consistent that way. It's nice to get the W versus Tri-County to play competitive against Stratford. And I know, they're looking to see where their measuring stick is against Edgar on Thursday in their next conference game.
We will continue talking about girls basketball and also hockey a little bit later on. And we'll also look ahead to some of the games as we go into the holiday week a little bit later in the program as well. But we're going to come back and have our student-athlete guest for tonight. From Wausau West High School, senior wrestler Savannah Danielson. We'll have Savannah coming in next. This is the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. On Wednesday, the Wausau West High School hockey team opens up play in the Showdown in Titletown, taking on Fond du Lac St. Mary Springs. Hear all the exciting action live on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app, starting with the pregame show at 12:20 and the opening face-off at 12:30. Wausau West Warrior High School hockey on Bull Falls Radio is brought to you by the Clover Belt Credit Union, Red Robin Restaurant, Sun Printing, Graphic Packaging International, the Wausau West Athletic Department, Menke Automotive, Shine Chiropractic, and Picks and Pieces. It's Wausau West Hockey versus Fond du Lac St. Mary Springs from the Showdown in Titletown. Wednesday, starting with the pregame show at 12:20 on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app.
Take your career to the next level with Graphic Packaging International. Work with a team to make Hot Pocket sleeves and the food trays you find at our local fair. Join the GPI team and experience the benefits of one of the highest paying manufacturers in the area, starting at almost $22.55 per hour. Enjoy job security, a clean facility, and an excellent benefits package, including a week of vacation after 4 months and 2 weeks after a year. Apply today at graphicpkg.com and elevate your career with Graphic Packaging.
If you're looking for your next ride, check out Mankey GMC in Schofield. Formerly Fred Miller Automotive, Mankey GMC serves Schofield, Wausau, Marshfield, and Stevens Point with a huge selection of new and pre-owned vehicles. Explore a range of top-notch SUVs like Acadia, Terrain, and Yukon, or choose from the rugged Sierra truck lineup, or even a certified pre-owned vehicle. No matter your dream vehicle awaits at Mankey GMC, 448 Grand Avenue in Schofield, and online at MankeyAuto.com. Mankey GMC in Schofield, where your journey begins.
And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO. And on the Civic Media app. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. And time for our student-athlete guest for this week. And it's a bit of history because we have never had a girl wrestler on our program. And we're very happy to welcome from Wausau West High School senior Savannah Danielson. And Savannah, first of all, thank you for coming on over.
Yeah, of course.
Well, number one, I'm going to have you get a little bit closer to that microphone
Okay.
or else project, because we want everybody out there to be able to hear you. But number one, just to give folks a little bit of background, WIAA has sanctioned a state tournament for girls wrestling for just 2 years. This will be the third state tournament. But you've been wrestling for a lot longer than that. When did you start wrestling?
I started wrestling when I was 10 years old, so that was 5th grade.
So what got you into it originally? What was the draw for you to get involved in wrestling?
A few family friends, actually. They would always come over to play for a little bit, and then they would go up to practice, and we were always curious on where they were going, and we joined in on the fun, and it's been exciting.
Has it always? I don't know. I guess I asked this again, not knowing everything that goes on with wrestling at all. Have you always been kind of? Do you have older siblings that you fought with a little bit? Do you have parents that nudge you in that direction? Do you have certain things that kind of, led you to that role as I'm going to take on some wrestling or not?
Yeah, I actually have an older brother who wrestled and an older sister who wrestled.
Okay.
And then I have a younger brother who used to wrestle, but he doesn't anymore.
And with this being so new, does it always seem like? I don't know. I would think with something new, there's always this element of proof. We got to prove that this needs to happen. We got to prove that this is a big deal. Do you feel like Do you feel like you're always continually having to prove yourself in a sport where maybe it's been that bigger physical thing around here? It's been dominated by more by a boys' sport than a girls' sport, and that now you're getting your say and you're getting your time, and I'm going to go make the most of this. And does it always feel like that, or you're good and it's going and you're enjoying it?
I do feel like it's like that sometimes. I feel like the boys try and overpower the girls and make it seem like, girls wrestling isn't that much of a deal, that big of a deal, and boys wrestling has always been here, and that girls are just trying to copy the boys, and that we're just trying to be like them. But I feel like being a girl wrestler has a really big impact on the younger girls who want to join in on the sports and have physical contact like the boys do, and that's just exciting for them to come up here and do that.
And building on the youth, do you see, because off air, I know Chad mentioned to you that the numbers, and you see more, see West trying to be ahead of it a little bit and proactive in girls wrestling. Do you see that coming through on any of the youth clinics you might work, or anytime you help out with whatever levels they have of wrestling at the younger levels? Are more females coming through? Are you trying to pick people, get in here, do you can do this? Mm-hmm. I mean, do you feel like a recruiter almost, and you got to work hard to continue that tradition that you want to start right now in your career?
Mm-hmm. I definitely see it at the youth tournaments. You see a bunch of little girls just going at it and wanting to be like the boys, and I feel like from the years that are just coming, the girls are getting better and better and better, and it's amazing how quickly they're learning and picking up everything and wanting to be physical like the boys are.
Did you have to go up against boys when you first started? I mean, in terms of the youth wrestling, and if yes, what were the challenges of that?
Yeah, I did actually. That was probably the hardest struggle I've faced with wrestling. The boys just grew a lot quicker, and they were physically stronger. They pushed you a lot, and I feel like that's why when you wrestle girls now, it's not as much compared to the boys when you wrestle them. I still wrestle boys now in the boys varsity lineup, but I feel like skill comes in to play a lot other than strength. You got to know where you're going, what you're doing, and just go with the flow.
I was going to ask you, I think you kind of answered, but I'm going to give you an opportunity maybe even to go further. In those situations where basically, as you said, you may not have the physical gifts that maybe some of the boys had, did it make you a better wrestler? And now, especially especially during a tournament series when you're trying to win a state championship in the girls division, how much does that help you in terms of the skill set that you developed?
Oh, it definitely helps a lot. I mean, it's not only physically, but it's mentally hard. And like my coach says, excuses are lies. So you just got to go with the flow and keep going. It's all in your head, and you can break through anything, and you just got to keep pushing.
Well, I was going to ask, again, curious, are the best wrestlers that you're seeing when you wrestle in your tournaments and competitions, do they are they doing it the same way, where they're wrestling boys and they're finding those weight classes that way? Or, because I know sometimes maybe if they have enough, they might stick to their own teams based on being broken up by gender. Do you see that the best girls are doing that, or is it kind of a unique thing to what you guys are doing at your school?
I do see some of the better girls that have been wrestling for a long time in the boys lineups at varsity meets, and I feel like for them, they're just getting challenged. They need that challenge, because when you go to these girl tournaments and a bunch of these girls are brand new, they're not facing what they need to face to be prepared for that state tournament.
Again, we're talking to Savannah Danielson of Wausau West, senior for the Wausau West Warriors in high school wrestling, here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. I'm going to get back to growing the sport, because I imagine that you obviously were not uncomfortable going up against the boys. I bet you there are a number of girls that would say, I might be interested in it, but I don't want to be put in a situation where, physically it's in a sense a little bit unfair. I imagine just the idea of having these girls teams, having a girls tournament and girls tournaments elsewhere is a big factor in helping grow the sport. Because I would imagine that you probably had friends and others who, well, maybe I'd be interested, but I don't really want to go up against the boys because it is much more difficult.
Yeah, I definitely do feel like that girls are uncomfortable practicing in the room with all the boys and how aggressive they are and how they talk to the whole team, and they kind of feel excluded out and that they're not talking to everyone. But I definitely feel that girls have a mindset where, yeah, boys are sometimes immature, especially in high school, but they can include themselves and be a part of the team with the boys. But now we're starting girl practices only. When boys have tournaments, we'll have girl practices only and just girls, and any new wrestlers can come up and just get the feel of it and just be with the girls and the girl coach and just kind of ask questions and understand how wrestling works.
How much of an advantage was it for you to start off going up against the boys in terms of the whole atmosphere within the high school wrestling team? Because you were just talking about how it can be maybe a little bit intimidating, but you've been around it. How much did that help you in the entire transition to get to this point?
It helped a lot. I feel like I'm a quick learner, which is very helpful, but it really comes back to like the experience you've had and what goes on in your past matches and learning from that and working on stuff you need to improve on. It all takes time.
Real fast before Jeff jumps back in. You said you started when you were 10. When did you know that you had an aptitude? Because that's something that I like to find out, because sometimes, kids, hey, I would like to try this. I would love to be part of it, but then they don't find the aptitude. When did you realize that, hey, not only did I want to get involved in this, I can be pretty good at this? Did it come pretty naturally?
Yeah, it did come pretty naturally. I went to a bunch of tournaments. I tried to spend all my weekends wrestling and spending the time in the gym and working and just improving myself. But I found that I was really, really interested in wrestling when I started placing top on the podium with the boys.
Some positive reinforcement, basically, right?
Yep.
And, you talk like you analyze your skills and your abilities. So just looking at what you've done so far individually, some things that, I really like this about my style right now. I like this, what's in my matches that I'm doing well. And, here's some things I want to refine so that as the season progresses and the matches continue and you ultimately try to build both, team and individual to as far as you can go in state. Well, what are some things you like about what you're doing right now and some things that, I really want to work on this a little bit more?
I really like the work ethic I put in and how I want to be challenged every day at practice. I go out and I wrestle with the boys. I try and get new partners, feel them and how they move. A few things I'd probably work on is just having the team all together and kind of figuring it out with them and trying to view what they're struggling through and just helping them with their struggles and challenges.
And just for our listeners that are, I'm not knocking our listeners. I'm the naive one, I guess I'll say it that way. Well, because I know what a basketball season and practices and all that entails. It's different. I mean, I'm sure they're eating right. You're meeting weights, from what I know. I don't know how long practices are. Is there weight training involved there? Because it's just a different style. Give us a picture of what's a typical day like this to stay or to do what you have to do to be the wrestler you want to be.
We have 2.5 to 3 hour practices every day. We try and go through break with practices, so we're constantly working at everything. But so eating wise, light foods before you wrestle, just staying consistent with your weight and drinking lots of water on meet days and throughout the week. As far as weight cutting goes, depending on if you want to cut down to a lower weight class, coaches have a weight plan for you and certain weights you have to meet for that weight class. Pretty much just stay hydrated, eat light. Is
there ever a big shift based on the number of girls you have on your team, like where you have to jump significantly, or is it really fairly tight, or are you always at the consistent weight class?
For me personally, I'm at the consistent weight class. For everyone else, I feel like our girls team is really spread out and that our weights aren't as close together as some other teams, but we pretty much have a full lineup.
How many girls are on the Wausau West girls wrestling team?
Currently, we have 21.
Which is a pretty amazing number, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we were talking about that not all schools in the Wisconsin Valley Conference have teams, and even those that do have girls wrestling, not even close to that. And I imagine that you've been at the WIAA state tournament last year and being around it. How does it compare? Does Wausau West have more girls wrestlers than maybe any school that we know of? I mean, how does West compare to other schools in the state?
I'm pretty sure we're up there with the highest girls team, so that's pretty exciting.
Let's look back at last year, because you made it to the state finals down at the WIAA state tournament, and it was not a straight line to get there.
Yeah.
You actually suffered a rather significant injury. Let the folks know, what was your injury last year, and when did it occur?
It actually happened the first tournament of the wrestling season. I was in the championship match at the Eau Claire North tournament, and it was tied 0-0, and we were going into the second period, and I accidentally posted, dislocated my elbow.
It just sounds painful.
Yeah.
I imagine, and then, in the aftermath, you're just starting your season. I'm sure you had exceptionally high expectations. What happened? What was your mindset? Did you have the immediate goal of getting back? Talk about the rest of your season that ultimately led to a state finals appearance.
Well, I took the time after I got injured to rethink and process what happened and just figure out what the plan was when I got back and how soon I would get back and what I could do to keep tagging along with the team and being included even though I was injured. Being at practice every single day and just being around wrestling when I could have been wrestling was just a really big thing.
And then when did you return? How many weeks were left in the season when you got back to the mat?
3 weeks were left in the season before I got back, and then from there it was just a grind. It was just going at it, and I just really wanted to make that state tournament.
Was it a surprise that you were able to make it after missing all that time, or did you come in saying, hey, I like where I am, I still feel confident I'm going to be able to achieve the goals that you had set?
I felt pretty confident. I mean, I was still ranked in the state, being out most of the season, but I knew most of the girls that I faced I have beaten before, so I just went into that state tournament and just hit it on.
And, getting to state, you get that taste. And as an athlete, I'm sure if you got, if you're only a junior or sophomore, whenever that happens, there's that hunger taste till you keep reaching that pinnacle of what you think you can get to every year. And wrestling, I think, is unique also because there's the individual component as much as there is the team. Where like basketball, your team comes out and you leave together and you enter together. This one, there's some more moments that can be had one way or the other. So for you and your teammates or you yourself, some of the goals, some of the things you want at the end of the day when, if we're talking in February, March, what we want to accomplish as a group and as an individual.
Some goals I think our team would like to reach are some really big tournaments and to get challenged and to face these girls that we've never seen before and to place as a team. Maybe further on there will be a girls team like state tournament, but just thinking about that is very exciting, and I think that's what pushes most of our girls in there.
And how about what you want to get individual? I mean, you might say where you want to go. You got free range to do that.
Individually, I want to get in that championship match again. I want to go against that same girl in that
I was
state
going
final.
to ask, do you have similar competitors? If you had to predict, you don't have to say any names, but if you had to predict, you think you'll see the same competitors there?
Yeah.
That you're going to have to either go through, or they're going to have to go through you, however you want to look at it?
Yeah. I definitely want to see that one person I lost to and make it a better match than it was last year and see where it goes.
Outside of high school wrestling, are you involved in any, I don't know, because other sports have outside of high school. You have opportunities, whether through clubs or through off-season programs. Are you involved in anything that's outside of the high school wrestling realm? Or do you have tournaments and anything else like that?
I mean, more towards the end of the season, there's freestyle and Greco stuff, but not really, no.
Well, and I was going to ask, leading into other sports, do you play any other sports other than?
Yeah, I do tennis.
Okay. Does that, you find as a multiple sport athlete, which I always think is a great idea or a good thing to do, you be multiple sport, how much does one help with the other?
Oh, it definitely helps a lot. I mean, with tennis, like the footwork you do and hand coordination, eye coordination, that helps a lot with wrestling too, and just figuring out different things that work for you.
As a senior, obviously, you coming towards the end of the high school career, are you hoping to continue to be on the mats and wrestle at the college level?
Yeah, this has been a big question that has been thrown at me a lot. But yeah, I definitely think that going on with wrestling would be a great idea, and I enjoy it.
How big is wrestling at the college level in terms of the opportunities? Are a lot of schools offer it?
Yep.
Maybe here in Wisconsin, are there women's wrestling teams at the state schools?
There's Stevens Point, which is D3, and I think Lakeland's D3 too. Oshkosh is actually coming out with a girls wrestling team next year, and they've asked me to wrestle for them. So,
do you have a preference of any of those? I mean, because you're senior and you start thinking of where you want to end up, and so I guess two questions: you have a preference of one of those schools you'd like to be at if you could pick, or are you still looking? And then otherwise, what as a major, do you have a decision on what occupation you'd like to eventually be involved with your studies?
Yeah, I'm actually thinking to Oshkosh. I've been leaning towards that school for a while now. I'm thinking to study nursing. So,
what do you like to do when you're not either on the tennis courts or on the mats and involved in sports? What do you like to do to get away from it all?
In the wintertime, snowboarding.
Well, you need some snow here.
Yeah.
Been a slow trek on that one.
In general, just hanging out with my family, bonding, making memories, friends, working.
It's not easy to balance out, is it?
No, it's not.
And what we always ask our student-athlete guests to wrap things up, especially a senior, and especially in your circumstance, I think, with a fairly new sport. And as a senior, and you have a teammate that may be a freshman or a sophomore that's just starting their journey at the high school level, what piece of advice would you give? What have you learned over these last 3-4 years at the high school level that you could pass along to a teammate that is just starting their journey that could help them get the most out of their experience?
You've got to change your mindset. You've got to be open-minded about everything. Got to take in new information. Keep learning. Keep going at it. You're not going to get better unless you try. There's always opportunities out there to get better and to get stronger, and you're going to face a lot in life.
Anything else, Jeff?
I guess just lastly is obviously from what you shared, I would imagine you're probably a pretty big leader for your wrestling team. How important is that role to you, and what do you do to make the most of it, I guess?
I'm actually a team captain for the boys and girls team. I really try to be open to everyone and to have them reach out to me if there's anything wrong or if they need help with anything, just to give out information and to let everyone know that I'm there for them.
Savannah Danielson, congrats on your state runner-up from a year ago. Congrats on all the success, and best of luck trying to get to that top step at the tournament coming up here in a couple of months' time. But thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
Again, Savannah Danielson from Wausau West High School, senior for the Wausau West wrestling team. We're going to take a break and then come back with more. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 1230.
So, how are the kids?
Well, Emily made the honor roll.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah, we're really proud of her. Tyler, on the other hand, though.
What's going on?
He's been moody lately, just feeling down and not like himself.
Oh, we've been there. Nick was struggling last spring. He was so anxious and stressed.
Really? What helped?
Well, he joined the soccer team. And ever since, he's been a lot happier. He has more energy, he's less stressed, and he's definitely in a better mood at home. It's made a huge difference.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad he's getting out of the house, he's getting some exercise, and he's off his phone for once. It's been good for his mental health.
Sounds like it's been good for your mental health, too.
Participating in Wisconsin high school sports improves students' physical and mental health. Encourage your son or daughter to get involved. This message presented by the WIAA and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
Parents of class of 2024 seniors, graduation is a few months away. Do you know where your photos are? Melissa Sullivan of Picks and Pieces Photo and Digital Organizing can help. Mel is a professionally trained photo manager who can convert printed photos and outdated media to digital formats, consolidate and organize your digital photo collection, and create custom photo books, gifts, and slideshows. Preserve, organize, and share your priceless family memories today. Call Mel at 715-446-0762 or visit picksandpieces.com today to learn more. Again, that's PIX, the letter N, pieces.com.
For more than 60 years, Sun Printing has been Central Wisconsin's commercial printer of choice due to their commitment to quality, creative solutions, and dedicated service. Sun Printing's team offers you a wide spectrum of services, whether you need vehicle graphics, offset, digital, large format, graphic design, or mailing. They print everything under the sun. No project is too big or too small, so give Sun Printing a call at 845-4911 or visit them online at sunprinting.com.
And welcome back, Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Again, thanks to Savannah Danielson for joining us. Very impressive young lady.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to both the player guest, really explain things well. You can understand, kind of get a picture. I like when you can get into both like player and coaches that we've had on for our two interviews tonight, into their heads, and they paint a picture of what they're seeing, whether it's out of their teammates, their program. how things are going. I think that's always the most interesting thing, and when they're well spoken, they share the insights. I think it's kind of, I don't know, my most fun, rewarding moments of getting to be part of this. So I always appreciate that.
Absolutely. And again, if you missed our interview with Coach Schmidt earlier, or our interview with Savannah just a few minutes ago, a little bit later on this evening, we'll have the entire show posted by going to bullfallsradio.com/sports and then click on the Big High School Sports Show logo, and you'll be able to listen to this program and previous programs from each Wednesday night here on WXCO. We had not quite finished up in terms of the girls basketball before the interview. We got to through the Merriwood South. So Merriwood North, you got Athens at 5-1, 6-4 overall. Phillips 4-1, 8-2 overall. Rib Lake is 3-4 in the conference, 5-6 overall. Abbotsford 2-3 in league, 4-4 overall. Prentice 2-4, 4-6, and Chequamegon 0-6 and 2-7. And for the Merriwood North, young lady for Athens had a big week. Sophia Coker, she had 30 points in a 61-23 win over Chequamegon last Thursday, and then added 26 points in a 45-30 win over Shullsburg on Saturday. And one thing that's also noticeable, and I don't know if you caught this, but the Phillips girls basketball team was down in Orlando, Florida.
I did not.
They played Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. On Thursday, Phillips played a team from New Jersey, Red Bank Regional, and won 61-54. Mattia Eckert, 25, Casey Eggebrecht, 19. Then on Friday, they played a team from Tennessee, Upperman of Tennessee. They lost 61-47. And on Saturday, they played a team from Arkansas, Bentonville, and Phillips won by a score of 49-35. So, I mean, that must have been quite an experience. And normally you don't see it while school is still going on, because usually you wait to a break, either spring break for like softball or baseball, and maybe break for Christmas. But I would think that was right in the middle of school. But still, to play, it must be really something to play teams from a different part of the country like that.
That's where my first thoughts went, like to see something outside the state even, because, there's, different styles of diverse play, different styles of the way things work geographically. So I think it would be cool to get outside the area that much if you have the time to do that, the funds to do that, to get your team down there. And it maybe shows you a different dimension of your team when you're facing basketball in a different area, totally different area. So to go get win 2 out of 3, that's something you want to see. Interesting. If I jump into the Phillips Athens, those teams at the top of the conference,
right,
they're kind of standing out. I think one of them, Phillips only lost is to Assumption. And I wonder,
they challenged them,
and
too.
Athens' only loss might be to Phillips.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think those two are going to be hanging around at the top and slugging it out. And that next game, if they can keep some consistency here, will be a big game when they face each other in the conference standings.
CWC East, Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, just one loss on the season still. 8-1 overall, 3-1 in the conference. They're tied for second with Wyawega-Fremont in the conference, behind only Bonduel. Of course, Bonduel handed Whitburn the only loss the Chargers have had. Amherst is 2-2 in the conference. Manawa is 2-2 as well. Menominee Indian and Shiocton 1-3, and Iola Scandinavia 0-4. Wittenberg-Burnhamwood got a rather tough win against Menominee Indian, 66-61 last Friday. Rory Salveson and Melena Granquist had 24 points each for Wittenberg-Burnhamwood. Bonduel has stayed undefeated with wins over Wyawega-Fremont and Sevastopol in a non-conference game last night. But Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, again, it's interesting because you see them 8-1, and so often, and again, nothing against Whitburn, but they've had some pretty good years, and then they get to the playoffs. That next level has not been quite able to get there, and that Bonduel game was a bit of maybe an early wake-up call that, again, you have to take those steps forward. And for good teams, knowing how good you have to be, being challenged is vitally important, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, you got to have that. You got to be, so to speak, have your back put against the wall and see how you're going to come out fighting and how you react to it. And sometimes you don't get to practice that. You just get to, how are you going to fight through it? And you might not do it right. So it's nice to have that hiccup early on so you can see, both as players and as coaches and as a program where you stand, so you can punch through that the next time it happens, because it's going to happen again in the playoffs. It might happen in another one of your tough conference games when that's on the line. Obviously, Wittenberg playing some very consistent basketball, though, other than that, at 8-1 and 3-1 overall in the conference. And they have the two girls that are knocking around a 20-point average each, which tough to defend, two 20-point scores on a team in my mind.
And CWC North, a good week for Northern Lutheran. Last Thursday, they defeated Marion in a conference game, 49-13, and then Monday they beat Port Edwards in a non-conference game, 48-28. So Northland 5-4 overall, 1-1 in the conference. And right now Boulder and Gresham, they tend to be in the girls basketball in that division, 2-0. Northland next at 1-1. So.
And I find it, just looking at the records that we analyze, you got teams up at have 6-7 games in their conference. You got teams that have had 2. You got teams that have played 10 games for the girls already when it seems like we just started. But, a couple of nice consecutive wins for the Northern Lutheran girls. And again, we talk about that smaller school environment where, they're off again till after New Year's, which is sometimes for me, just as a former coach, feels like that's a long time. It just seems a long time to have down and hard to fulfill that game-like atmosphere in practices. So it's but coach's preferences is what it comes down to.
Hockey. Always love the hockey.
I'm ready.
There you go.
I know nothing, but I'm ready.
Wisconsin Valley Conference, Stevens Point at 5-0 leads the way. Wausau West 4-1. Wisconsin Rapids 3-2. East Merrill United 1-3. DC Everest 1-4. Marshfield 0-4. Last Thursday was the big one of the two biggest games in the conference. Stevens Point beat Wausau West 5-2. Biggest reason for that, 3 power play goals in the second period for Stevens Point. Stevens Point then stayed undefeated in the conference Saturday. Wisconsin Rapids gave them a pretty good matchup, but Spash earned a 3-1 win, and Spash kept the winning coming last night with a 4-1 win over DC Everest. And Wausau West back in action last night, a game that I had for the most part here on Bull Falls Radio after some technical issues. And the thing was, the Warriors played really well before I got on the air. With my tech issues, they scored 11 seconds into the game, had a 2-0 lead at the end of one period. Chippewa Falls then scored 3 times in the third period to pull out a 4-2 win over the Warriors. So, again, Chippewa Falls ranked in the top 5 in the state in Division I. Wausau West, as we've talked about, they challenge themselves next week. They go to the showdown in Titletown, which they do every year in that week between Christmas and New Year's. They will take on St. Mary Springs, which is one of the top 2 teams in the state in Division II. They will take on the number 1 ranked team in the state, Edgewood, then on Thursday. And then on Friday, they will take on another highly regarded team in Middleton. So for Wausau West, a couple of losses, but again, I know the coach, it's a process. And they test themselves so significantly. Sometimes the overall win-loss record is not quite as illuminating as maybe for some other teams because the Warriors play so many tough teams.
And I find it just interesting when you read off those number where the teams are ranked and who they're playing. I mean, the energy levels and the consistency and the drive you got to have just to try to take on that schedule, I think, is impressive. Because from out of the many teams in sports we cover, I think that's one of the more interesting things that we end up talking about is how difficult that schedule is and testing yourself. I mean, the grind that the coaches and the players have to go through is also, you got to give them the props on their mental endurance just to do that, because I think that's a big deal and not something easily accomplished just to go out and get those games every night.
And Great Northern Conference, kind of a tough week for Mosinee. They lost last Thursday in a conference game, 9-4 to Tomahawk. And then last night, lost to New Richmond. New Richmond, one of the best teams in Division II, number 2 ranked in the state, and New Richmond beat Mosinee 6-1. But Mosinee, high expectations coming off a trip to the state tournament a year ago. Lost to Lakeland earlier. Now lose to Tomahawk, putting themselves a bit behind the 8 ball, and, even before the new year starts in the GNC. But again, a good non-conference game. You don't want to lose by 5, but at the same time, again, at this point of the season, you see some teams that look like they're great in December, and they're not so great in January and February. Again, I mean, it's such a long winter sports season. You want to be successful every night, but at the same time, you can't get too high or too low at this point, can you?
Yeah, and some teams go through different patches. Like, obviously the new You say New Richmond or New London?
New Richmond.
Okay, you said they're ranked. They're a very good team. When we had our Mosinee hockey guests, and I thought one of the teams that he thought was most improving would be some tough teams was Tomahawk that he mentioned in that conference. So, you're going to have some high and low spots. Again, it's always how do the players bounce back? What do they learn from that stuff? And I think the moment of preaching comes in that consistency, and you got to find it. You can find it at different times. You can find it in different increments. And I it's a grind. It's a 4-month season. That's so many times why people don't play these sports sometimes, is because it's so long of a season. So it's not always easy on the athletes either, but there's different times to peak and there's different times to do things right. And it's coach's job to help the athletes find, the athlete's job to work hard enough to get to that point.
And on the girls' side, we had the old big high school sports show jinx, as we talked to Jana Wimmer, the coach of the Central Wisconsin Storm last week. They were 7-0, but then we knew that they were facing a couple of really tough opponents. Number 4 ranked Hudson, number 3 ranked St. Croix Valley on Friday and Saturday. And the Storm on Friday lost to Hudson by a score of 2-1, and then lost to St. Croix Valley by a score of 4-1. So the Storm now 7-2 on the season, still ranked number 3 in the state, behind Superior and St. Croix Valley. And they do take on another ranked team coming up tomorrow night, as they will travel to the Bay Area Ice Bears. So again, like Wausau West, the Storm, a little bit different for Central Wisconsin, because I find that they're very unique in that they're an independent. And I know that I think for a lot of teams, having that conference to be a focus is important. For a team like the Storm, where it's all non-conference games, it's all about the playoffs. It really is. I mean, it's one of those things where you can't win a conference championship. You obviously want to win these games, but it is different being an independent, isn't it, in any sport?
Right. I mean, because the conference... Normally, when you're in a conference, you also see it starts young. It's that you start playing these teams in middle school, if not maybe your 4th, 5th grade levels, where you're seeing them a little bit. So these, as much as they are rivalries, these opponent relationships grow, and you start seeing what you're made of. So that when you get to that conference, you try to win. You try to go for broke and win that all, and get that as one of your I guess high school life accomplishments at that point. And so, when you don't have ownership in that because you're an independent, you have to go out and find those games. And the rivalries, I think, are built in a little different way. And it can probably stack the schedule quite a bit, make it a little different. And your hopes of winning those games, like you said, lie at the end of the season, where as you're playing conference games, you're measuring yourself progressively from game to game that way. This way, they're measuring themselves, I think, over a longer period. So it does change the dynamics. I don't think it makes you any less competitive, because you can still make your own schedule the right way, but definitely changes, kind of your outlook from game to game versus a time period over games. Because, again, when you're playing such a heavy competition in that independent schedule, you may have to judge it not night in and night out versus weeks or months, or where you're at the end of the season versus the beginning, things like that.
We got to take one more break, and then we're going to come back and look ahead. And now, again, we're going to kind of pick the brain as well of Coach Gress, because this week is a unique week during the season. It really is. And one of the unique aspects is next Wednesday we have games. Because usually the reason we have this show on Wednesday is because there's no games. And there'll be actually games on Wednesday. So we're going to talk about there's some conference activity before the end of this week, and we'll talk about some of the big matchups coming up in boys and girls basketball. We'll take a 3-minute break and then come right back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230.
What's your idea of fall fun? Maybe it's hitting the trails on a new ATV. Then it's time to call CCU. That's Clover Belt Credit Union. Or if you're thinking of a UTV for hauling wood or hunting, or maybe just because it would make the tasks around your property so much easier, it's time to call CCU. ATVs, UTVs, utility tractors, and their attachments for care of your property. Whether you need it for fun or to get the job done, Clover Belt Credit Union is here to help with the great rate financing you want. What are you waiting for? Life's too short and winter's too long. Thinking about a motorhome or maybe a snowplow for your ATV or utility tractor? Call CCU for great rate financing. And if you're thinking motorcycle, Clover Belt Credit Union has the financing you need for the bike you want. Call or apply online at ccuwausau.com. Check it out. For vehicle loans, for mortgages, for financing fall fun, call Clover Belt Credit Union. That's CCU. Local lenders lending local money, keeping our community strong.
Winter sports are here. Align your young athletes and yourself with health by scheduling an appointment with Dr. Sarah at Shy Chiropractic in Rib Mountain. Stay in the game with our comprehensive 3-point neurological exam, safe for the entire family. Don't let the daily grind keep you and your student athletes on the sidelines this year. Call Dr. Sarah at 715-298-5104. That's 715-298-5104 in Rib Mountain today.
For more than 60 years, Sun Printing has been Central Wisconsin's commercial printer of choice due to their commitment to quality, creative solutions, and dedicated service. Sun Printing's team offers you a wide spectrum of services, whether you need vehicle graphics, offset, digital, large format, graphic design, or mailing. They print everything under the sun. No project is too big or too small, so give Sun Printing a call at 845-4911 or visit them online at sunprinting.com.
We are the NFHS. That stands for the National Federation of State High School Associations. But really, what we stand for, together with the WIAA, are the 178,000 high school sports students in Wisconsin. And so we stand. We stand for the runners, soccer and basketball players. We stand for their coaches, administrators, and officials. We stand for the swimmers, football players, and wrestlers. We stand for the golfers, softball, and volleyball players. We stand as the national leader and advocate for high school athletics and all who participate in them and make them possible. Because it is our purpose to ensure that high school students get to play, perform, and compete together. To learn more about who we are and what we stand for, visit nfhs.org.
And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes, and time to look ahead in terms of what's happening. We get a chance to talk a little bit about some conference activity, but a lot of holiday tournaments and some teams not playing at all. It's really a smorgasbord, and you've talked about this, that some teams we won't be seeing them for a while, and others will be very busy, in fact, over the next week and a half.
I know it's not a lot of days, but when you say the next game that you have is December 28th, it just seems like it's forever because you got the holidays mixed in there. Less time, on the practice floor for some teams because you're going to get back some of that family and holiday time. So it's just an interesting mix-up at this time of year of what teams decide to do to keep themselves active and acclimated to the court.
When you look at, let's start with some of the games featuring WVC boys. There's one conference game, and it's nice that it will be broadcast right here tomorrow night. Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. I'll be at the Wisconsin Rapids Lincoln High School Fieldhouse as the Wausau West Warriors take on the Lincoln Red Raiders. As I said, the Wausau West team has been very hot recently. Only lost in their last 6 when it came to Stevens Point last Friday. Wisconsin Rapids, it'll be interesting to see this new team that's been throwing up a lot of 3-point field goals. They haven't played, they've only played one conference game so far. But for Wausau West, again, I've liked what I've seen. This is the kind of game, however, that you want to have. I mean, you much rather be 2-1 in the conference going into the new year than 1-2.
Oh, definitely. I mean, for West, it's you don't ever, right now I think it's a little early to say must win, but you want it. It's just a nicer outlook as you enter some extra stuff to be proud of, I guess. And so for West, that I'd be interested to hear your take on what you see out of Rapids. I know they have an interesting schedule too because I think they lost December 12th to Mosinee and got beat up a little bit.
Yes, they did,
and they haven't played since,
which is odd.
So that's a long time. I mean, I remember Coach Witter's schedule, he would keep those guys active. I mean, they were playing a lot, it seemed, all the time. And now I think that for the month of December is a big time to stay dormant. So it'll be interesting to see because you need game, I think, to get ready. So let's see how West can take advantage of that. Yeah,
I mean, they play a lot of games.
I think that gives you an extra edge.
Some non-conference games between tomorrow and Friday. Tomorrow, Rhinelander at Merrill. That's a very interesting game. Rhinelander is a solid team in the GNC. Merrill, I think they need to bounce back. We've seen them bounce back already, but they had a tough one against Wausau East last Friday. Then Friday, Eau Claire Memorial at Stevens Point, and also Marshfield at Hudson. Again, a couple of Big Rivers versus WVC games. So those 3 non-conference games, I think all good non-conference games.
Well, and I think starting with the Merrill Rhinelander, I think that, that's a big deal when the last time you took the court, you obviously didn't perform and play you want based on the scoreboard and based on how your team did. So you're looking for that nice win. Again, just speaking strictly from records, overall Merrill's 3-3. It's nice to go in the break saying we're 4-3, and we got one more notch in that win column. For Spash to jump around non-conference, to test themselves again against Eau Claire Memorial, I think that's a good game whenever they jump around in those different conferences. And what was the third one you listed?
Marshfield and Hudson.
Yeah, and again,
that's a long trip on Friday night.
That's
to be
what
honest
I was
with you.
thinking.
That's going into the holiday weekend.
Yeah, and Hudson's always fairly solid. And
I went over, but it's a beautiful school.
Yes, it is.
I went over to the playoffs last year. Boy, that place is something else. But they're a good team,
right?
Very good team.
And I know, when I heard some of the announcers last night talking that Hudson game was another game Marsh was kind of looking forward to test themselves, because obviously their last non-conference game against Neenah didn't go so well, so you want to push your non-conference record as much as your conference one.
And next Tuesday and Wednesday, DC Everett's an interesting little trip. Tuesday and Wednesday at the Crest Center at UWGB. Sundrop shootout on Tuesday. They take on West up here, and then Appleton North, and Appleton North whipped Wausau West at the Fieldhouse a few weeks ago. That's going to be a really tough matchup for Everest, but also an interesting matchup because, again, as I've said, you can't compare. I guess you can compare, but you can't. I don't think make too much of it. But again, to face a team that whipped West, and Everett still has West twice, it'll be interesting to see what they do.
I think the big deal, just talking about going to that side of the state, number one is getting teams outside the area whenever you can in your non-conference opponents, challenging yourself a little bit, staying fresh as much as you can around your conference schedule, and testing yourself. That if I saw the West Appleton North score and I was in the same conference, we'd be plugging that with our players to kind of tell them, hey, here's where they stood. We want to stand a little better on our feet against that game and make it better so we have a comparable marker when we play each other. So I think it's a big deal in these Christmas holiday tournaments to get some competition outside the area.
Big game in the Merrillwood South that we talked about with Coach Kurt Schmidt earlier. Stratford hosting Auburndale. What do you think about that one?
I think it's what you want right now. You got what
your two buddies coaching.
Yeah. Well, so I don't pick sides. I hope that they both win, which they can't. I'm nice.
Once you become a media guy, you got to stop that kind of stuff.
I'm kidding. Whoever wins out, but they're right neck and neck, and for Stratford's sake, I think a little bit more. They played in a couple tight ball games here, and they've been some good games. And I think that you're going to see the war you always see, and I think it'll be a good competitive one, 5 points or less one way or the other.
And before we get back together next Wednesday at 6, early in the day, or Wednesday morning, marathon at the Wisconsin Basketball Yearbook Shootout, taking on Kettle Moraine Lutheran.
I think that's, I watched Newman in that tournament last year. That's a good one to go to. You get out of the area, you get down in an environment where there's a lot of...
And it shows respect. When Mark Miller invites you, it means you have expectations.
Yeah, it's got a lot of hype to it in kind of an innocent way where there's not... a target on your back, but you get to go showcase yourself, and I think it's a great team experience. And the number of other basketball you get to see on top of yourself, I think it's valuable when teams can go, your team can go see other teams, whether their division's higher or they're dominating in another part of the state. I think that helps your program overall, and it's a great atmosphere as family and teams get to spend time together doing that.
I don't know. Is there anything else on the boys' side that jumps out at you? Not really. Anything am I missing?
For the end of the week?
Yeah,
or coming,
just generally. I mean, for the next week as we look ahead. But between now and when we get back together,
a couple little things, and I know when I think a good balance of a couple different conferences is the tournament that Stratford will host over it, because you got East in the Valley, you got Lakeland and the Great Northern.
Well, I wasn't going to bring that up because that's not in our time frame. But if you want to talk about it.
Well, I was just saying, just coming up, and I guess in terms of conferences.
That's Thursday and Friday of next week.
That's right. We'll have it then. But you get to have.
Well, you can talk about whatever you want.
Yeah, well, I'm just sharing that you get that balance of some different conference teams in there. And I like, because you got teams going down to the Milwaukee area, some teams going over to Green Bay, some teams just having one game as a spot. So I think the idea here is if you got one more tough non-conference game before the kids go on Christmas break, or one more conference game, you really try to finish that out to the best of your abilities on whatever those coaches and programs gear as success in that game. And then you jump to those free-for-alls, hopefully playing. If you're taking a break, you got to figure out a way to keep your team active if you're not playing any games, and why you're not playing any games. And if you are, you got to go out and try to get some good measurable success results out of that stuff.
On the girls' side, Valley, boy, a lot of teams play tomorrow night. They're all non-conference games. 6 of the Valley squads. Or is that... There's only 6, I think. I can't remember anymore.
Playing, you mean?
Oh, yeah, there's 7 teams in the Valley.
There's 7, but
6 are playing tomorrow night. Yeah. All non-conference games. East at Lakeland, good luck, Lumberjacks. West at Eau Claire Memorial. Warriors need to get something going. They've kind of been struggling a little bit. Everest at Whitburn. Again, Everest trying to rebuild. Spash home against Chi High. Merrill at Rhinelander. Marshfield at Holman.
Everybody might be playing them. Is that all 7?
That's 6. Rapids.
Who are we missing?
Rapids.
Gotcha.
No Rapids. Merriwood South does have conference games tomorrow night. Stratford at Assumption, Auburndale at Marathon, Newman at Edgar. Quick note that Tom Weaver will be at Edgar tomorrow night, part of our doubleheader of high school sports, because we don't go on holiday quite yet. Tom will have the game between the Newman Cardinal girls and the Edgar Wildcats live on the Sports 2 stream of BullFallsRadio.com, and the Civic Media app, and that game will also air on delay following my broadcast of West at Rapids. But I guess, again, Assumption's just kind of a step ahead, aren't they?
Yeah, I would think that they're going to still hold that conference lead. They're just out there as the 4 or front runners of that conference. I think, but for other teams, like Newman, again.
Newman and Marathon. I mean, they both won their last game. Can they build on it?
Right. And again, different measures of what those coaches feel. Obviously, everybody wants to win, but when you're building whether you have young players, whether you have a new coach, when you're building those programs, I think it's a big deal of the little measurable successes you can have within a game to build to the next game, and hopefully that increases the competitiveness you want to see out of your program going forward and in the rest of your schedule.
And frankly, again, a lot of teams need W's. And I'm talking about the Valley teams and the Merriwood South teams and the Merriwood North teams because, again, at this point of the season, a lot of them are struggling a bit. I don't mean that to be, negative, but at the same time, I think all these teams need that little bit of momentum. I think it's been a bit of a hit and miss start for a number of these teams, hasn't it?
Well, right, and it's the consistency. You want to string together a couple, and then maybe you can lose one because you just didn't come out and play well that night, or whatever didn't work offensively, defensively. But when you can string together, 3-4 games in a row, you might, you can build off that,
right?
And lead into things that are eventually going to help propel you to the successes you want to have at the end of the season when you get ready for those playoff games. And that's why I think the strength that is built in your conference schedule, along with the non-conference teams you play, there have to be such a good balance there when you're looking at that. And I think whatever it takes for the coaches and the programs to find that consistency, I think for some of the patterns you're mentioning, it's going to come in W's. That's going to be their measurable mark.
How much do you know about your team at this point of the season? I mean, are you fairly confident you have a feel? Because, I mean, there's always some question marks going into a season, especially when there's a lot of change, when you may have lost a number of graduating seniors from the year before. As we get to this point, holiday time, how much do you know?
Well, I think if you put the work in on the game film and you've done the stuff you need to see in the summer, it just all builds, and you should be able to have a good idea what our strengths and weaknesses are. And you might have some surprises along the way of things. I didn't know these guys could do that well on that, or something that clicks right away. As much as you're gonna be like, I thought that was solid, but we got to keep working. You should have a good evaluation of your team if you know your personnel well, and if you have realistic expectations of what can be accomplished. So I think there should be stuff that you're fully refining as well as stuff you're building on at this point in the season, and you should have a good idea. And then, there's still the hiccups in it.
Do you make major changes at this point? Based on what you've seen, or as a coach, how do you take the information? How do you take it to the practice court and the game court at this point? Because this normally is that time you have a little bit of time to maybe evaluate, as opposed to having games on Tuesday and Thursday or Tuesday and Friday. What's the coach's mindset at this point of the season?
Well, I think if you see a lot of struggles and you have a better way to do something, you can make that major change now, because you've got some time to fix it. You got some time to trial and error it, maybe away, because your conference, it's not hinging your conference schedule. You might be away from home and you can go see if it's a high or low. Not maybe necessarily right in front of the limelight. So I think it's a big deal to try it now, as much as it is to it's all based on your personnel. You got to know what is going to work best for the players. And I think when it does work, or when you see the most successes, is those coaches really know their players and know what needs to be done with them, whether it is a change or whether it's continuing to build off what's already been established.
Thanks again to our guest, Kurt Schmidt, the Stratford boys basketball coach, Savannah Danielson, senior from the Wausau West wrestling team. Thanks to Jeff Gress. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas.
You too. I appreciate it.
Make sure that you hope for me to have no issues, because I have a game in Green Bay on Wednesday next 12:30 p.m. face-off.
Yeah, don't leave me hanging by myself.
Gotta get back here by 6 o'clock next Wednesday, so we'll come back and do it again.
Sounds good. Awesome. Have a great holidays, Chad.
That's the Big High School Sports Show here on WXCO.
WXCO 1230 AM, W255DN Wausau, streaming at bullfallsradio.com.